This is Sam Sorbo, wife of Kevin Sorbo. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Kevin Sorbo, he's probably most famous for his role as Hercules in that old 1990s TV show. He was also the atheist, the evil atheist professor in God's Not Dead, like 1, I think, or maybe 2. I don't remember which one it was. Anyway, they are both religious extremists to the highest degree. Well, she's been doing a talk show circuit, I guess you could call it. She went on this show called Flashpoint, which is a show on the Victory Network, owned and operated by Kenneth Copeland. It's unhinged stuff, dude. So she goes on this show called Flashpoint, October 11th, right? And she says a whole bunch of stuff about school that I just could not let go. So let's give this a listen, see what she had to say about homeschooling or public schools or whatever else.
I love the conversation that preceded this one, the idea
preceded
that that evil is taking over our children in our Democrat-run schools, headed up by Randy Weingarten and the Democrat-run, communist-run teachers unions.
Wow, she really does not like unions, first of all. Unions are not communist, nor are they communist-run by default. I don't know of a single communist and or socialist in any position of political power in the United States. Seriously, name one for me. Okay, maybe you can name one, but I have no idea who it would be. Even Bernie Sanders claims the title of socialist sometimes, but he's not. He's a social democrat at best. He's still capitalist, still believes in free markets and in all that other stuff that comes with capitalism. He just thinks we should expand our social welfare systems and stuff like that. I'm a huge Bernie guy, by the by, but he's just not a socialist. Nobody in the United States is socialist or capitalist, much to her seeming dismay. Anyways, as it turns out, she absolutely hates schools. Keep listening to what she had to say about it.
And that is what passes for education these days. That's all they have. They only have lies. And it's very sad because we're losing our place because we've been taught not to stand up for ourselves. We are trained in school not to have discernment. Our schools are anti-Christian in nature, and they hate Christ, and they hate the truth. And so we are trained in this way.
Dude, what? Schools hate Christ and hate Christians and teach you not to have discernment. What is she talking about? She is out there in Nutter Butter land, never to be seen again. This is absolutely nuts.
Truth. And so we are trained in this way. All of us have been school injured at this point.
Okay, they use the term blank injured entirely too often. This is honestly comical to me. Just, I don't know, 6 months to a year ago, they were all over this TV show, Flashpoint, screaming about being vaccine injured. That was like the big popular word or phrase to use all over the place. Vaccine injured, even though it was complete nonsense. I just got my 4th vaccine, as a matter of fact. My card is filled all the way up. There are no more slots. I got so many vaccines. Anyway, God, they're crazy about being blank injured. You know why? Because they want to be persecuted. They want to find some reason why they're persecuted, even though they're not. Even though they have probably never faced persecution a day in their life. They have no idea what persecution is. And persecution is something you can't really understand until you've experienced it, in all seriousness. As a white, straight, cis person, you wouldn't expect me to understand what persecution feels like, but I actually do know what persecution feels like as the result of my treatment at the hands of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's very deeply painful. It's a painful, discouraging experience that nobody should ever have to go through. What they're talking about, what they're experiencing, this isn't persecution. This is fake persecution that they're using to whip their audience into a blood frenzy, to increase their sense of brotherhood and group loyalty and trust between them. That's really what their sense of persecution is doing for them right now. And that's why Sam Sorbo, Kevin Sorbo, and everybody on this program, all of them, all the evangelicals I ever talk about, even Jehovah's Witnesses, that's why they're all constantly talking about how persecuted they are, because they can use it as a weapon against people. If people feel persecuted enough, like if Sam Sorbo makes the far-right extremist Trump supporter in West Virginia, feel like he's being persecuted enough, then she can get him to do something insane. That's the point of persecution when they do it. Anyway, let's keep listening to what she said here.
And that's the whole point of what I try to train parents in, is how to bring up your children in a Christ-like home, in a home that honors God, in a way that honors God, right? The Bible's very clear. It never ever says put your children in school.
But it doesn't ever say not to put them in school now, does it? This is how propaganda works. This is the disingenuous framing. She's trying to make you think that the Bible explicitly tells you not to send your kids to any kind of school, that you should be teaching them alone, solely, you, no matter what. When that's not what the Bible says at all. If anything, the Bible says you should teach children in the ways of Jesus or whatever other thing. It does not say a word about school being evil or whatever other nonsense. That is how propaganda works. She harnesses the power of religion to manipulate you into believing that she's right. If I were a Christian, I would honestly be offended by what she just did. It's kind of blasphemous, twisting the Bible around to your own ends, to make people follow you, believe you, trust you over what God actually said in the Bible, supposedly.
It's very clear. It never ever says put your children in school. It never ever says submit them to the government for their education. And so why are we doing this when the schools are teaching anti-biblical theology?
They're not. No school is teaching anti-biblical theology. What is she even talking about? Schools do not teach theology. I mean, we're talking public schools, like K to 12 kind of thing. It doesn't teach religion as a core part, or it's not supposed to. I'll tell you this, though. If it did teach religion as a core part of the curriculum, K to 12, it would most definitely be Christianity. And that should be deeply disturbing to everybody. The reason it would be Christianity rather than Islam or whatever else is because Christianity is the majority religion in the United States and has a stranglehold on everything, every system, from municipalities all the way up to the federal government. You can't run for president and win unless you're a Christian. We have never had a non-Christian president. Never. In the history of ever, as far as I know. Well, I guess Thomas Jefferson. The early days, maybe. But yeah, I would say the early days. We've probably had non-Christian presidents, like deists or whatever, as presidents. But certainly more recently, in the past 100 years, never.
To the government for their education. And so why are we doing this when the schools are teaching anti-biblical theology?
They're not.
Anti-Christian theology.
Yeah, so true.
No, it's not at all. Like, even a little bit. Look, I'll take any proof that they have. I'll take anything. Isn't it weird they never offer any? And they expect you to believe it anyway? She kept going on and on, like the Energizer Bunny. Listen to this, October 11th.
God in the Bible is very clear. The parent's responsibility is to, quote, educate the child. Now, you have to talk about what you mean by educate, because what they mean by educate is not education. What the Bible talks about is education. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. There's plenty of sources in the Bible that you can find that will show you how and what you should be talking about when you're talking about the education of your children.
Wow. Okay, hang on. Am I to understand that she believes that the Bible says you should only educate your children to love God? Is that right? Is that what she's putting down? Because that's what I'm picking up right now. No reading, no writing, no arithmetic, only loving God. And I guess you could teach them to read because they're going to need to read the Bible, right? That's what I believe that she's saying right now.
There's plenty of sources in the Bible that you can find that will show you how and what you should be talking about when you're talking about the education of your children. And I can help also over at Underground Education Academy. If you join the Academy,
I'll pass.
And if you just want to come on the free website that we have, it's just a community of people who exchange ideas. There's a lot of help that we can offer there. But the education of children is not as overwrought as the educators want you to believe. That's their job security. They've convinced you that you're incompetent. Do not.
You are, Sam Sorbo. You are, as a matter of fact, incompetent. And let me just lay this out for you. Statistically speaking, say we got 330 million people in the United States, right? 330 million. Out of those 330 million, how many people are truly incompetent, like actually incapable of providing a good education to their kid? A lot, I'd be willing to bet. What is it, 1%? Hell, if it's not a lot even, say it's 0.5%. And let's say only 100 million of the people in the United States are even in school in the first place. Being generous, I have to imagine that's somewhere in the ballpark, right? What is 0.5% of 100 million people? No need to wonder, just loaded up our question gun. Let's go answer hunting. 100 million times 0.005. That's 500,000 kids who will receive an inadequate education. A subpar is not even like beginning to describe what they would be getting because their parents are not competent enough to provide an education. That's assuming only 100 million out of the 330 million people in the country are children that are in school at this immediate moment, and that only 0.5% of them have incompetent parents. That's 500,000 kids who will receive an education that is not worth having, or no education at all, possibly. Is she not realizing how deeply destructive to society these ideas are, and how likely it is that this is going to straight up destroy the United States? Having an uneducated population is a quick way to destroy national security, I would say. This would be like a national security threat if anybody was actually taking what she said seriously. And what was it she said a minute ago? Let me just step back. Hang on.
But the education of children is not as overwrought as...
Right. I want to look up overwrought just to see what context she's using that in, see if it was correct there. So overwrought defined means in a state of nervous excitement or anxiety. Another definition would be of a piece of writing or a work of art too elaborate or complicated in design or construction. I guess it could mean that. I guess that could have been the correct context. The education system could be better, but it could be worse. And it is the only thing that's keeping the United States afloat right now. It's keeping people even a little bit close to competitive with other countries. Let's keep listening here.
That you're incompetent. Do not submit your children to that abusive system.
Oh, now it's an abusive system. Okay. Wow. This is not her first rodeo talking about how destructive schools are, destructive education is, or whatever other thing. Check this out. Late July 2022. This is an example of what happens when you think you know psychology, but you don't.
Why the rebranding?
So the first thing that you learn in school is you have to raise your hand to ask a question. That's a deterrent. That's actually teaching you viscerally, because you embody it. Don't ask.
What? Okay, wait a minute. Raising your hand to ask a question is telling you not to ask at all? What? What is she talking about? She has no idea what she's talking about whatsoever.
That actually eventually becomes trust the expert. That's not education. That's not a thinking person. That's a non-thinking person. That's what the schools are turning out. That's what school produces.
Okay, now, there's something called the slippery slope fallacy. I'm going to try my absolute hardest not to engage in this, okay? I don't want to make it out like, oh no, if we do this, then this huge chain of events is going to lead to something ridiculous. I just want to follow this to a logical conclusion, okay? What do we do if we have a question in school? The teacher's teaching, lecturing, talking, whatever. Instead of raising your hand, you're in a classroom with 30 first grade students, and one of them has a question about what's happening. What does he do? He yells the question out. Now, what if 13 students all have different questions simultaneously? I'm trying not to fall down a slippery slope here. This is just surface level analysis, okay? It's going to turn into a chaotic train wreck. The hand-raising system exists because so many students need to be educated in the first place. This is what happens when you think you know something about psychology and you don't. You know absolutely nothing about it. She's pretending that this is like a brainwashing situation. You're brainwashing children into trusting experts because you tell them to raise their hand if they have a question. She thinks that this is subliminal programming or some other nonsense. This is insane. And to trust experts, like, and what was that last thing she said?
That actually eventually becomes trust the expert.
Okay, and of course, experts can't be trusted, right? People who know more than us on a subject cannot be trusted to convey that subject accurately. We need to do our own research, quote unquote. Well, guess what? Who do you think put the research there for you to find in the first place? Experts. Of course, she's not looking in scientific literature for answers. She's looking on Facebook, but that's neither here nor there.
That's not education. That's not a thinking person. That's a non-thinking person. That's what the schools are turning out. That's what school produces.
Just literally everything about what she just said is complete nonsense, and I just don't know how to parse it. Before we continue, I just wanted to mention something. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, there's Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring, or you can check out my Telltale Unfiltered channel. I go through long-form, unhinged sermons from all kinds of people, from Hank Kunneman to Greg Locke to Jehovah's Witnesses. So give it a look. Links are in the description. Okay, now back to the video. She's been on this media tour for a while, going around to all these different talk shows talking about how evil school is, how evil education is. Not just that, but how evil feminism is and all kinds of other crazy stuff. Listen to this one, mid-July 2022.
So two things, Sam Sorbo. One, we are
This is Newsmax.
very glad that, God has his own creation, and he creates like dangerous neon colors in nature to say, stay away. We're glad that these teachers have colored themselves dangerous neon colors so that we know to keep our children away from them. We appreciate that. We're not trying to compliment the lib teachers. But
Okay, I think it's kind of amusing that they assume that only people to the left have colorful hair or whatever, when I literally just did a story about Kat Kerr, supposed prophet of God, prophesying that God is upset with you for not liking her pink hair.
And I speak these words from a person of hope I chose.
Which is Kat Kerr. She's trying to make you believe that God is speaking through her mouth right now. So God says to you, he chose Kat Kerr. And what does he want you to know about the person he chose?
If you don't like her pink hair, get over it.
Right, that's the message that God would deliver to his people if he could communicate with society. Okay, the point is, Sam Sorbo and this Newsmax anchor or whatever seem to be under the impression that only people to the left have pink or colorful hair or whatever. It's just weird, dude. They're looking for the low-hanging fruit is what it boils down to.
teachers. But secondly, how horrifying is this as a mom to watch this and say, like, this is the person who could be educating my child?
No, what's really horrifying is that a parent would actually submit their child to that kind of child abuse. And that's what that is. That's child abuse. And
What is? Having a teacher that has colorful hair? What is child abuse? I don't understand. Please inform me. What is it? What is it about this dynamic that's abusive at all? Raising your hand. I'm sorry. You know what? She said it a minute ago. Why didn't I remember? Raising your hand is the abusive thing. My mistake. I'm such a dummy.
it's child abuse. And we really ought to stop mincing our words and call this what it is. And if anybody wants to take issue with me, they can go to samsorbo.com and we can have a discussion there.
Yeah, you really want to get one over on me? You don't like me? Well, I dare you to go to my website and look up my stuff. That'll teach me. Definitely. That'll really put me in my place if you go buy my books.
.com and we can have a discussion there. But teaching children that there is no such thing as natural gender is absurd. It's a lie.
Okay, who said that? Who taught anybody that at all? Like, which school, which teacher is teaching children, presumably she's talking about elementary school, that, what was it, natural gender is a lie? What was that?
We can have a discussion there. But teaching children that there is no such thing as natural gender.
Okay, I don't know what she means by natural gender, quote unquote. And again, who is teaching anybody this stuff? This is nonsense.
Is absurd. It's a lie. But we've been teaching lies for many decades. We teach children that evolution is truth,
It is.
even though it has yet to be proven.
No, it's been proven 1 billion times over. If you don't believe that, then you just don't understand the science behind it. Evolution is not something you believe in. Evolution is something you either accept as the scientific fact that it is, or you don't accept it as the scientific fact that it is. I really don't care if she believes it or not. It does not matter to me one bit. What matters is that she's spreading this toxic nonsense all over the place.
Proven. We teach them that they are accidents of nature. They're just a collection of random molecules that happen to organize themselves into.
Okay, no to all of that. I am not a collection of random molecules. I am the product of two cells meeting and growing into a human being. And before that, each of my parents was the product of that. And before them, their parents were a product of that. And it's gone down the line like that for billions of years. We are the result of billions of years of evolution and growth and change and natural selection and sexual selection and artificial selection, all kinds of stuff. That's just how it works. But she is absolutely appalled at the idea that anybody believes that.
Nature. They're just a collection of random molecules that happen to organize themselves into a human being. And
that's not what anybody believes, literally anybody.
We don't even have a definition for human being anymore.
They don't even have a definition for human being? Are you kidding me?
Human being, and we don't even have a definition for human being anymore in our schools, much less the definition of a woman in the Supreme Court anymore.
There it is. Yeah, it's just a culture war battle that she's waging right now. Just ridiculous nonsense. The definition of words are in the dictionary, and that's usually where people turn for them. This is all just completely made up. Although, for what it's worth, it is actually pretty difficult to define an object like that. You can poke a hole in any definition. I could ask you to define the word orange, and you would have trouble defining the word orange. So, for example, are tangerines included in that definition? You say it has an orange skin and it's a fruit. Well, what about a tangerine? Because that falls into the definition that I just gave. What about tangelos? What about peaches? You can continue to narrow it down more and more and more, but the end result of all of this is that definitions are really hard to pin down. That's just how it works. We have a colloquial understanding of what a tangerine is. We have a colloquial understanding of what a human being is, or a woman, or whatever other thing. What she's referring to is a culture war issue. When Ketanji Brown Jackson was nominated to the Supreme Court, they were putting her through the ringer, as they do with new Supreme Court justices, and they asked her what the definition of a woman is. And again, she realized that it's not easy to define things that way because there are a billion exceptions to it. So she said, I'm not a biologist, just to push the issue off and not deal with it anymore. And that got these people whipped up into a tizzy. Frazzled. Frazzled is the word, I think. They were absolutely frazzled by that. Couldn't deal with the fact that she pushed it off and didn't want to handle a ridiculous culture war issue, and they bring it up in nearly every single show that they do now. Not just Sam Sorbo, but people like Gene Bailey, Lance Wallnau, Kat Kerr, Hank Kunneman, Kenneth Copeland. They all talk about this nonsense constantly. So this is just her calling back to another stupid culture war issue.
A woman in the Supreme Court anymore. And this is all lies. And it's child abuse to subject a child to those kind of lies. What's sad is that parents...
What kind of lies? She didn't tell us any... She didn't define any lies just now. She said they can't even define human being or woman anymore. Well, what lies are they telling? There wasn't a lie listed there. There was just a lack of a definition, supposedly. What lie is being told?
To those kind of lies. What's sad is that parents think that that is still a better choice than themselves just teaching the child how to be a human being.
I guess we're leaving reading, writing, and arithmetic out of that then, huh? Just teaching them to be a human being. Reading is off the table. Unless it's reading the Bible, of course. That's important. So I guess reading just to that level and that level only, right? Now, I don't think they even want the kid reading the Bible. That would probably end badly in their mind. All right, this one is from early December 2021. This is a little bit older. She was at the ReAwaken America tour, which is a far-right QAnon conference that's held. They've had Donald Trump Jr. there, I think. They've had Clay Clark runs it. They had a whole bunch of really high-profile people. Sam Sorbo, of course. Sam Sorbo is actually extremely influential, and her husband, Kevin Sorbo, is even more influential than that. Well, listen to what she had to say here at the ReAwaken America tour.
But I pulled my son out of school in second grade,
because they weren't educating him. They were training him a little. It wasn't going well. And I
Do you think maybe that's your son's fault? I'm just throwing it out there.
started to question, what was the final result going to be? He was learning how to be a bully.
It was most definitely her son's fault. It sounds like he's just a shithead to me, honestly. I think the kid's just a shithead who refuses to like cooperate or like learn or work with others or any of that other stuff. And instead of accepting that her son is a shithead and needs to be disciplined, she decided to blame the school. Galaxy brain take.
Because let's face it, in school, they teach you evolution. What is evolution? Survival of the fittest.
Okay, they don't teach... Honestly, I didn't learn evolution at all in school. I went to school in West Virginia from 3rd grade to 11th, basically, and I dropped out of high school eventually. I didn't learn evolution at any point in school, ever, in West Virginia. I don't think. So she's talking, 2nd grade, right? They don't teach evolution in 2nd grade. At the very earliest, I would say they would teach that in maybe 8th, maybe? More than likely, it would be closer to like 10th or 11th. What is she even talking about? And the survival of the fittest nonsense? What?
Survival of the fittest. And what is that? That's bullying.
Okay, this is her ridiculous excuse for why her son is a shithead.
Christians have no business sending their children to public school.
Oh my God. Yeah, she's been railing against public school for a long time. It's honestly sad. She's also, interestingly enough, been railing against atheists for a while. This one's early December 2021.
Education is the 3 F's: faith, family, and freedom. And there's only one way for them to get that, and that's to be with their parents.
Wait, education is faith, family, and freedom? What? No, education is like reading and writing and math and science and history and stuff. She believes herself to be qualified to teach anybody literally anything at all. I feel so bad for her kid, honestly. This kid is not going to come out of this situation okay, is he?
It's to be with their parents. And so I'll say this. Evolution doesn't give a crap about equality. Evolution believes in inequality.
Evolution doesn't believe in anything because it's not an ideology. It is simply a scientific fact. There's nothing to believe in.
Okay? If you're teaching your child evolution, you're teaching them slavery and inequality. And now God is calling the remnant to fight. And fight for what? For freedom, because Jesus Christ is the author of our freedom. And evolution has nothing to do with that.
Correct. It has nothing to do with that. It's completely unrelated. What is she even going on about right now? This is insane. This is absolutely unhinged from reality. She not only rails against quote-unquote Darwinism or evolution or education or whatever else, but she has deep issues with atheists. Listen to this, early June 2021.
The greatest trick the devil ever played was to convince the world that he didn't exist, right?
Okay, I guess.
The greatest trick that the atheists ever played was to convince us that they don't believe in God. They do. They believe in God. They believe they are God. And guess what? They're a jealous God. That's why you can't go to church.
Okay, I can go to church, actually. I'm fully capable of doing so. I just don't want to because it's boring as sin, no pun intended. She really doesn't like atheists, does she? She has deep problems with atheists. This is honestly kind of sad and embarrassing simultaneously, but I will be damned if it's not entertaining as hell to listen to her just like eat herself alive with like hate and anger, and it's just bizarre, dude. Let me know what you think in the comments or on Twitter at Telltale Atheist.